It was a busy Sunday morning at Birmingham, Alabama's 16th Street Baptist Church. The African American congregation gathered for Youth Sunday, a special service led by the church's young people. The church, long a gathering place for Black Birmingham residents and civil rights leaders, was abuzz with activity on a busy Sunday morning. And then, a blast. Shortly before 11 a.m., a deafening boom shook the building. A bomb exploded, blasting a giant hole in the back of the church. 4 girls, Addie Mae Collins, Carol McNair, Carol Robertson, and Cynthia Wesley, were killed in the blast, and quickly became tragic national symbols in the city that had become known as Birmingham. But the 4 girls weren't the only racially motivated deaths in Birmingham that day. 2 boys were also killed in an eruption of hatred and violence. Their names were Johnny Robinson and Virgil Ware. Since its construction in 1911, the 16th Street Baptist Church had been a centerpiece of Birmingham's African American community. Considered the most racially divided city in America, Birmingham was the focus of civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr. and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference's efforts of nonviolent protest and boycotts. Based at the church, the Birmingham Campaign of May 1963 included the Children's Campaign, in which thousands of the city's Black children took to the streets, only to be met by police with fire hoses and attack dogs. Out of the brutality came change. The city agreed to desegregate public facilities, including some schools. White segregationists were outraged, and a string of bomb attacks on civil rights leaders followed. Anger grew on September 9, 1963, when President John F. Kennedy took control of the Alabama National Guard that Governor George Wallace had activated to prevent court-ordered school desegregation. It was around this time that a Ku Klux Klan member named Robert Chambliss told his niece, "Just wait until Sunday morning, and they'll beg us to let them segregate." The 16th Street Baptist Church was an obvious target. The man on the other end of the line said only 2 words to the church secretary, Carolyn McKinstry, that morning. 3 minutes. And then a click. Just minutes later, a bomb went off, shattering all but one of the church's stained glass windows and shaking the 3-story building. The roughly 200 people in the building began screaming and running for safety. Klansmen had planted sticks of dynamite beneath the stairwell on the side of the church. 4 girls, 11-year-old Denise McNair, Cynthia Wesley, Carol Robertson, and Addie Mae Collins, all 14, were in a basement restroom when the blast occurred. Their bodies were later pulled from the rubble. About 20 other worshipers, including 10-year-old Sarah Collins, who was also in the restroom, were injured by the blast that was strong enough to knock a passing motorist out of his car. Shocked and angry crowds gathered at the site, and tensions grew even as the church's pastor, Reverend John Cross Jr., recited the 23rd Psalm through a bullhorn. Tensions were at a breaking point. Johnny Robinson was 16 years old on the day of the church bombing. Raised by a single mother after his father's murder, Robinson had some brushes with the law, but was considered a good kid who had a hard life. He was headed to join his sister for Sunday dinner, but had stopped to hang out with some friends at the gas station on 26th Street. It was 6 hours after the blast, and the city was on edge. White kids were driving by, yelling racial slurs and waving Confederate flags. One of the group of boys Johnny was with threw a rock at a flag-draped car, and the police arrived. Johnny and his friends ran, but a police car blocked their way. Officer Jack Parker, a member of Birmingham's all-white police force and the president of the local Fraternal Order of Police, was sitting in the back seat with a shotgun loaded with birdshot and buckshot pointed out the window. Without warning, he opened fire at the boys, striking Johnny in the back and killing him. Johnny Robinson was victim number 5. Virgil Ware was enjoying a Sunday morning full of fun on September 15, 1963. A slight 13-year-old, he was riding on the handlebars of his brother's bicycle, unaware of the church bombing. Larry Joe Sims was 16 that day. He and his white friends had attended a segregationist rally earlier and soon found himself holding a revolver given to him by a classmate who was driving the teenager home. The white teenagers encountered the black children along the road, and Sims's friend, Michael Lee Farley, urged him to fire the pearl-handled .22 revolver and scare the boys. Instead, 2 bullets hit Virgil Ware in the chest and cheek. His final words to his brother as he was lying in the ditch were, "I've been shot." Virgil Ware was the 6th and final victim of the day of carnage. Outrage over the bombing and the deaths of the little girls was swift and fierce. Thousands of protesters arrived at the scene, and segregationist Governor George Wallace sent in the National Guard to restore order. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. spoke in front of 8,000 mourners at the funeral for 3 of the girls. The story of the boys garnered a few headlines, but was not the focus of most coverage. It would be another year after Kennedy's assassination that President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964, preventing employment discrimination due to race, color, sex, religion, or national origin. The act didn't cool the racial tension, but did put the force of the federal government fully behind desegregation. The tide was turning, even if the price was horrific. The stories of Johnny Robinson and Virgil Ware didn't capture the headlines. Their names were all but forgotten to history for decades, and like that of the 16th Street Baptist Church bombers, their cases involved justice delayed and denied. The FBI determined 4 members of the local KKK group were responsible for the church bombing. But due to political pressure and racist policies, the first prosecution in case didn't come until 1977. 2 more were prosecuted in the early 2000s. The 4th bomber died and never faced trial. The story is similar for the deaths of Johnny Robinson and Virgil Ware. A Birmingham grand jury reviewed the evidence in Robinson's death in 1963. But declined to prosecute the white police officer. In the 2000s, the FBI opened an investigation into the shooting, but said it couldn't pursue it because of the shooter's death in 1977. No one was ever convicted for Robinson's death. Larry Sims and Michael Farley were charged with first-degree murder for Virgil Ware's death, but were only convicted of second-degree manslaughter by an all-white jury. The judge suspended the boys' sentences and gave them 2 years probation. The bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church is a well-known chapter in the battle for civil rights, but the boys' death stories have become mostly lost to history. There are efforts to change that, however. Likenesses of both boys are now included in Birmingham's Gallery of Distinguished Citizens. Images of the boys were also included in a sculpture titled 4 Spirits in Birmingham's Kelly Ingram Park, alongside those of the 4 girls killed in the bombing. Their names are included on a memorial stained glass window at the rebuilt church, and their stories are told at the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute. Their families want their stories to continue to be told. Outside of Birmingham, the boys' names remain mostly unknown, and that should change. As Barry McNeely, historical content expert with the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute, said, "I think it's time to recognize Virgil Lamar Ware and Johnny Robinson as part of the sacrifice that enabled this city and this nation to be where they are today."
So, my friends, they did not die in vain. God still has a way of wringing good out of evil.